The Silent Boy by Lois Lowry. Prologue, June 1987. I am a very old woman now. My great-grandchildren, who call me Docky, a name my youngest patients gave me years ago, ask me to tell them stories, and I make up tales about talking pigs with pink hair ribbons on their curly tails, or monkeys who wear vests and carry canes. I am as good at foolishness as I once was in the operating room. If I tried to tell them this story, the one I am about to set down here, their parents would send me warning looks over the heads of the children. Don't, the looks would say. Stop. Meaning, too depressing, too complicated, too long ago. So when they come to me, young Austin named for his great-grandfather, the twins Sam and Zoe, merry-eyed Lily adopted from China, and solemn Catherine, who has my name but insists on it whole, never Katie, as I once was, or Kate, as I am now. When they come and ask me to tell them stories, I never tell them this one. It is not really a story for children, though it is about a child. But someday, one of them will point from a car window toward a huge stone building with boarded windows set in an empty, unlandscaped field at the west side of town and ask, "What's that?" Perhaps they will see, through untrimmed ivy on the stone wall surrounding the field, the carved word in the post to which an iron gate, long gone, was once attached. Asylum. A strange word, and a great-grandchild will likely mispronounce it at first, as I remember I did when I was learning to read. What's that? What was it for? I will write it down here, and this is what they will read as an answer. But where to begin? I will begin with myself. Katie Thatcher. Here I am, 13, wearing a sailor dress in this old photograph, looking solemn, but proud, too. The dress was a new one, and I felt grown up. I was, I think, a solemn girl, Henry and Caroline Thatcher's oldest child, and for 8 years their only. Our house on Orchard Street was large, and to the side of the big shingled house, its entrance approached from a pebbled walk through the yard. The walk was between oak trees, and Levi, the stable boy, who tended the horses, did odd jobs, spent many days in fall raking it bare, was my father's office. A small sign at the side gate read Henry Thatcher, M.D. From my bedroom window above the porch roof, I could see patients unlatch the gate and make their way to that door, bringing their babies, their arthritis, their small aches and larger sufferings to my father. By 13, I already knew that I wanted to be a doctor too. I read accounts in the news of the war that was raging in Europe, and I could not wrap my mind around the reasons for it or the terrible logistics of battles far away. I listened to my parents talking to their friends, our next-door neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Bishop, as they fretted over their oldest boy, Paul, who was just finishing Princeton then and should have been looking ahead to law school and to joining his father's firm one day. But Paul was already yearning to enlist in a war that had not yet, in 1915, begun to take American boys. But at 13, when I read the war news, I thought only of the wounded, and of how, if I were a doctor, I could set their bones and heal their burns. I had watched my father do so many times. I was not yet 4 when San Francisco toppled in an earthquake and burned. Even so young, I heard talk of it. At 8, I had heard of the terrible fire in New York, of the factory girls, scores of them leaping from the windows, their clothes aflame, and dying, burned and mangled on the sidewalk while people watched in horror. My mother had said, "Shh," to Father when he saw me listening. But he, seeing that my interest was real and not just a child's curiosity, spoke to me of it later. Though I was still a child, we talked of the ways in which death comes, and how perhaps, not always, but sometimes, a doctor could push death away, could hold it back, or at the very least, make it come easily. By 13, by the time I had the sailor dress of which I was so proud, many of those moments were past. San Francisco had been rebuilt. The Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire had brought about new laws to protect factory workers. And on the edge of town, when I was 13, stood the stone building called the Asylum. It still stands there today, though newspaper editorials call it the eyesore in an attempt at wit, and there is talk of tearing it down to make room for a housing development. Its windows are boarded over now, and the grounds are littered with debris. Sometimes, in my growing up years when Austin was my beau, we would walk out that way holding hands. Sometimes I found myself glancing at the ground, wondering if I would spot the gleam and flicker of a cat's eye marble dropped by a boy. I wondered then, as I still do, about the boy who had once given me a kitten and changed my life forever. His name was Jacob Stoltz. His is the story I mean to write down now.